Welcome back to another crunchy episode of Crime Salad. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Ricky.
And we're so glad you're hanging out with us today.
We are. And before we get into the case today, please like and share our podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you could, leave a nice review because that helps us so much. Helps grow the show, makes us feel good, all those things.
It's like Miracle Grow for Crime Salad.
I thought you were going to say for my head. It's not that bad.
It's not. I mean, it's really not.
It's only in the back.
All right, so let's get into it. This story is called The Nightmare Tenant, The Murders of Karen Koep and Davido. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a landlord for a second. You own a rental property and you have to evict a completely unruly tenant who doesn't handle it well. And you're just dreading the confrontation. And well, the worst case scenario takes effect.
Which is exactly what happened here. Now, don't get me wrong, not all landlords are great people. But from the way that most people describe Davido, he was truly the gold standard of landlords.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear from the people who knew him, like his neighbors, he was fiercely loyal. He was a dedicated guy who genuinely cared about the people around him. And he would give his neighbors a hand if they were working on something. And he would go out of his way for his tenants. He lived in Thurston County, Washington with his wife, Dr. Karen Koep, who was known as an incredible, beloved chiropractor. She had a passion for helping people, healing people, and making strong connections with her clients.
So from the sounds of it, they were very well liked in their community.
Yeah, which is why it was so obvious when something wasn't quite right in November of 2023, the couple seemingly vanished into thin air over a single weekend. Obviously, they didn't just pack up and leave on purpose. A welfare check was called in, and when police went to the house, they first noticed all the windows and doors were locked and the blinds were closed. But when they approached the front door, they realized someone had physically drilled through the keyhole on the doorknob. There were metal shavings that were left behind, hinting that this was freshly drilled. There was also an overwhelming smell of bleach coming from the garage.
So you have a potential crime scene, the smell of bleach, and that's never a good combination, never a good sign.
Never, ever. So whatever was behind those drilled doors and covered up with that strong odor of bleach, whoever did this didn't want it to be found. But something like this is impossible to ignore. The next step for investigators was to carefully document this evidence and breach this house. So this story brings us to one of Thurston County's most prominent cities, Lacey, Washington, a town with a population of about 60,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's actually the 24th most populous city in Washington. And in late 2023, the police there were investigating the suspicious disappearance of two people, 62-year-old Dr. Karen Koep and her husband, 68-year-old Davido. And yes, he legally just went by his first name.
Pretty baller.
When local news broke this story, it completely grabbed the attention of the locals. People were in absolute shock, realizing their local chiropractor was strangely missing. And when we looked into this story, we tried to understand who Karen and Davido were. And we found a post related to this case, actually on the Thurston County Sheriff's Office Facebook page. And in the comment section, it was flooded by hundreds of locals sharing their personal stories about the couple. We learned that Karen was known as very motherly when she cared for her patients, and patients wrote about how she kept the coloring pages their kids made for her, and she let the children hang out in the office while their parents were being treated. She was heavily involved in the River Ridge High School swim team and was a staple in the local running community, frequently seen jogging along Marvin Road. One patient fondly remembered that Karen would just talk with her patients, sharing her knowledge on how to live a healthy life.
So I have to say, we're getting pretty good at scouring Facebook. So if you're going to put it on Facebook, probably going to find it. So she was very active and loved in the community. So when people found out what happened to her, it hit a lot of people emotionally.
Yeah, exactly. And the community's memories of Davido were just as moving. He managed their rental properties, but he was also highly sociable, a helping hand around the neighborhood, and fiercely loyal as a friend. And there was one incredible heartbreaking comment that really stood out to me from a tenant who lived on their property. They shared a story from Friday, November 10th, just 3 days before the couple vanished. The tenant described it as a freezing, windy, and rainy night, but Davido was out there fixing a light for them. And when the tenant told him to get out of the cold and go home to his lovely wife, Davido just lit up and said his weekends were all about Karen.
Yeah, and Davido meant it too, because during the trial testimony, the next door neighbor actually explained that Karen and Davido were always together. They were that couple that was holding hands, walking around the neighborhood. They were just that couple.
Yeah, I almost picture the two of them sitting at a table, getting lunch together, and you look over and you just think to yourself, oh my gosh, how cute is that couple? But that beautiful life they built was about to collide with a 45-year-old man named Timothy Burke. Burke was a tenant living on one of the couple's rental properties off Stedman Road Southeast. This was right near a U.S. Army base. And he was running a garage on the property and living in it. Now, from what we gathered, it seems that Burke had a heavy history of questionable behavior. On that same Facebook post, people were sharing their own terrifying run-ins with him. Now, we should mention that a lot of this falls under local community chatter, but one person said that they knew Burke's previous neighbor, who had the absolute worst time trying to get him evicted. And others mentioned that he had been formally trespassed or banned from at least 2 local coffee shops. And there was supposedly another incident where he showed up at a local church and deeply unsettled the congregation. There were also accounts of him walking around in public with a firearm just hanging out of the pocket of his sweatpants. He's probably not the best guy to be heavily armed, especially when another local resident mentioned that Burke had actually pulled a gun on a couple who were just walking their child down the sidewalk. And supposedly the police were called, but absolutely nothing was done. So if all these things are true, it makes sense that his behavior was severely disrupting the Stedman property compound where he lived alongside the other tenants. He would constantly get into screaming matches, and he would walk around recording people while he was in conversation with them, almost as a way to protect himself and twist the narrative. On November 10th, around 4:00 p.m., Burke showed up at Davido's location and confronted him about the high beam situation. Davido calmly explained, well, why didn't you just say, hey, turn your high beams off? It seemed like a normal conversation. And Burke was recording this all, but he wasn't acting overly combative or anything. And they actually shifted to discussing some repairs that they were working on together for the property. This entire interaction was recorded by Burke on his phone and later shown in court. The detail that really sticks out is that Burke doesn't come off as delusional in this video. He's actually pretty aware of what's happening. But behind the scenes, according to official court documents and detective testimony, Karen and Davido were actively in the process of formally evicting Burke from the property.
So I wonder if Burke knew they were trying to evict him.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Burke was well aware that an eviction notice was looming because detectives discovered that almost 2 months earlier on September 13th, 2023, Burke had actually contacted law enforcement to complain that Davido was plotting to come up with a story to get him evicted. Investigators even confirmed that it was actively in progress right around the time of the murders. Timothy Burke's state of mind at the time of the murders became the central topic in court. Was he completely delusional and in a psychotic episode, or was he just flat out angry?
I don't know. To me, it just seems like he's in a paranoid state, or like he felt everyone was out to get him.
Well, I mean, he could have been. So it became like this ping pong effect in the court between the prosecution and the defense. And to understand his mindset, investigators dug into his digital footprint and mapped out a terrifying descent into madness. The defense pushed that this was all fueled by an incredibly dark, spiraling paranoia. The trigger for his mental collapse was tied to a profound personal tragedy. So in October of 2023, just weeks before the murders, Burke lost one of his daughters. But instead of grieving, his mind completely fractured. He incorporated her death into his growing delusion, convincing himself that Davido was a mastermind who was responsible for it, and that he was actively plotting to target his surviving daughter, Jocelyn, next. Over the course of a few months, Burke's online search history showed hundreds of searches for variations of the word narcissism and narcissist, almost exclusively applying that label to Davido. Burke is the one putting stress onto his landlord and the tenants, but he built this narrative where Davido is the ultimate villain of the story. And it wasn't just internet searches. The prosecutor noted at trial that Burke had uttered a terrifying, foreshadowing statement. The only way to get rid of a narcissist is to kill them.
And that delusion escalated into a full-blown imaginary murder plot. Burke convinced himself that Davido was actively planning to murder his surviving daughter, Jocelyn. He sent thousands of text messages and emails, often to people who had explicitly told him to leave them alone, claiming Davido was plotting to poison her, slip her fentanyl, or gas or snipe her. He's kind of all over the place at this point.
Yeah, he even relentlessly harassed his own family, demanding that they physically check on his daughter and send him photos just to prove that she was still alive. And it got so extreme that Burke actually filed formal public records request with the local Tumwater School District. He demanded to know if anyone had requested information about his daughter, completely convinced the school district was somehow tied into Davido's master plan.
Okay, hold on. So he files an FOIA request with a local school district. Like the middle school secretary is secretly coordinating a sniper operation with the landlord or something. So this part really shows how far out there he is. He has completely lost his grip with reality.
Yeah. And his paranoia only fed on itself. In July of 2023, an arson occurred at the Stedman compound. A completely separate suspect named Michael Ronimus was quickly identified, and he actually confessed to the crime that he set Burke's shed on fire. Burke refused to believe that it was him. He became convinced that Davido was the secret architect behind the fire and was using it to actively make tenants disappear from the compound. Burke started spamming the lead investigator on the arson case, Deputy Dylan, with frantic emails warning the police that they better track down the arson suspect fast before Davido made him disappear.
So what's really weird here is that people were attacking Burke. I mean, someone actually caught his shed on fire. So his paranoia is justified, but I think the blame is just misdirected by this weird narrative that he created in his mind, and it's all being pushed onto Davido.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it seems like at this point, there were clear signs that he actually needed mental help. But the lack of intervention just pushed him further to the edge. With all these things falling through the cracks, his delusions finally reached a fatal breaking point on Friday, November 10th. He later told psychologists that his psychosis peaked when he became completely convinced that Davido was hiding a body bag containing his surviving daughter, Jocelyn. Burke decided that he was going to break into Davido's house, and that night he was either going to call the police or kill him. Meanwhile, Jocelyn was perfectly fine and alive.
Wait, so that same Friday that he confronted Davido about the high beams or whatever, that was the same day that he decided to break in and kill him. Wow.
And we know from his digital footprint exactly how he planned it. Burke had his phone connected to the security cameras at the rental property so that he could see exactly when Davido left and headed home.
Of course he did.
And he also knew the approximate time that Karen got home from her chiropractic business, which is around 5:30. So around that time, when Davido arrives home, Burke, he powers down his phone.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to be tracked.
Exactly. So at 5:55 p.m., he powers his phone back on for a brief time, and his location pinpoints him right at Karen and Davido's property. And while sitting there, he Googles, "Do Android phones store a record of where you are?" And the response tells him yes. So he powers down his phone again.
He's like, oh shit.
Yeah. And that was at 6:01. So very shortly after. And to prosecutors, this makes him look incredibly self-aware and calculated. At 6:24 p.m., he powers his phone back on, and he calls a roommate of Jocelyn's. And then the phone is powered down again.
See, I don't see him as calculated at all because, again, he turns his phone on, he checks on his daughter, he calls the friend or whatever. That's the paranoia. I still think he's losing his mind, and it's a compulsion at this point. He's just, doesn't matter. He has to see if his daughter is okay.
At that exact moment.
He knows his pings are being tracked.
Yeah, he's like, well, is my daughter like...
Yeah, he still had to do it.
Then sometime after that, around 6:30 to 8 o'clock at night, a neighbor hears the gunshots. The very next day, Saturday, November 11th at 3:28 p.m., an email is sent from Burke's computer to his daughter, Jocelyn. And it says, "I have been leaving you alone, but I might just be doing that for a very long time. I want to say I've always loved you with all my heart. I have failed you due to being angry at you. I should have gotten a private attorney, but I was upset about you not cooperating with bringing the family back together. I hope you are still alive, and I'm sorry for how I've handled many things. I hope you can be wiser than me, make better choices, and be more thoughtful about the intricacies of dealing with people who are potentially dangerous."
I don't know. To me, this part is kind of sad because it does seem like he's losing his grip on reality. But at the same time, this is also him feeling guilty and apologizing for things that he's done in the past, because I think he knows he's been caught or going to be caught. He's probably going away for a long time.
Then came Monday morning, November 13th, 2023. Dr. Karen Koep was scheduled to be at her Lacey chiropractic clinic, but she never walked through those doors. And reading through those same Thurston County Sheriff's Office Facebook comments, you realize just how jarring this was. One of her patients actually commented on the thread saying that they had an appointment with Karen on the Friday before this all happened, realizing in hindsight that they were likely one of her last clients before the weekend. Because she was so deeply dedicated to her patients, simply not showing up on that Monday without a word was extremely unusual. Her office manager knew something was horribly wrong and immediately called the police to request a welfare check at Karen and Davido's home in the Lake Forest development.
I love that the community came together here. I mean, this is someone they care about. And when you have a professional who loves their job, they're at their job every day, if they don't show up to work, the police are going to take that really, really serious.
And they did. When deputies arrived at the couple's home, the entire house was completely locked down. There was something wrong here. The blinds were drawn. And as deputies inspected the exterior of the property, they noticed a highly suspicious and chilling detail. Someone had taken a power drill, trying to drill through the locks on the doors, leaving metal shavings scattered directly on the welcome mat.
It's kind of surprising that he would drill the lock, though. I mean, that's something that is loud. It's invasive, right? It would catch attention.
Yeah, it would. And if they were inside their home, he knew they were inside. So my question when we were looking into this case, did he drill these locks to get inside the house? Or was it after?
Why would you do it after, though?
Well, it's actually interesting. He did do it after, according to evidence and everything.
Trick question, then.
Yeah. So it's believed that he did this after shooting and killing Karen and Davido, essentially destroying the locks on his way out so that a family member who would be coming by to check on them, maybe they had a spare key, it wouldn't work. So it was just his way of buying some time, I guess.
Wait, so the doors were still locked, but the locks were drilled out?
Yeah, like you wouldn't be able to open the door.
Oh, that's weird. Wow.
And actually, the police had a hard time opening the doors. They had to access the house through the garage. And when they finally had access to the garage, they were hit with an overwhelming chemical smell of bleach. They move into the living room and they found a gruesome nightmare. There were 2 distinct, massive pools of blood. One coated the linoleum on the front foyer, and the second was a deep saturation stain soaked into the carpet directly in front of the couch. Thurston County Deputy Prosecutor Jennifer Lord later noted that 2 separate sets of crime scene investigators concluded the sheer volume of blood inside the home was unsurvivable.
Wow, unsurvivable? That is a crazy thing to say. So at this point, they know that they're dealing with a homicide. It's a massacre at this point.
Yeah, investigators also found bullet damage in the walls just south of the front door. And Detective Kyle Kempney, he noted that as they got closer to the wall, they realized that the bullet holes actually contained embedded organic tissue. And the killer had actually tried to destroy the ballistic evidence by actually digging out the bullet from the drywall.
Why would you take the time to take the bullet? But the crime scene is obviously a mess.
And then investigators found a .45 caliber bullet just resting on the carpet right across from the hole, and it was still covered in drywall dust.
Wow.
Strange.
It is.
And he also attempted to clean up the crime scene. He tried to clean the massive blood stains, which were surrounded by blood-soaked towels and bedding that had just been used to basically smear the blood around. But the most disturbing and surreal detail came from Detective Kempke. He testified that investigators found distinct wheel marks streaked straight through the massive blood stain by the couch. They were clear tracks of a standard household vacuum cleaner.
The hell? He tried to vacuum up the blood?
Yeah.
I guess I could see if this were like a shop vac, but he basically just has the household vacuum out there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and there was a lot of blood. The investigators noted it was unsurvivable.
Right. But what's weird is he tries to clean it up. He's obviously not making any progress at all, because then he decides that he's just going to start dumping bleach everywhere.
Yeah.
Then somewhere in the middle of that, he's like, oh shit, I got to get the bullet out of the wall. What the hell?
And then I got to drill the locks.
Yeah, and then drill the locks. I don't know. It's weird because his attention to detail is kind of happening, right? He's like, I got to get the bullet. I got to drill the locks. But he's also doing like weird, frantic, delusional things.
Yeah. So when detectives go into the guest bedroom, this is where they're like, oh, okay, more crap has happened here, because basically the whole house is pretty immaculate except for the blood. But then the guest room, all of the blankets are pulled off the mattress. So they're thinking that he actually took off these sheets, wrapped the bodies in them, and used the blankets to drag the bodies because the bodies would be heavy.
Oh, the bodies weren't there anymore.
Yeah, they weren't at the house when the investigators showed up.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And crime scene experts found distinct blood patterns on the garage floor, and this proved that this is where Burke dragged their bodies to remove them from the home, and then he splashed bleach all over the garage to try to hide. So, along with processing this crazy crime scene, they make an immediate realization. Burke's vehicle is parked in the driveway. Karen's car isn't there.
The hell? Why would you leave your vehicle at a crime scene?
Yeah. So Karen, she drives a Toyota Prius hatchback, and it's completely missing from the property. So police, they send out an alert for the car. The very next day, on November 14th, it was located. The Toyota was found abandoned near the intersection of 67th Avenue Southeast and Rayner Road Southeast in Olympia.
Well, what the hell was he thinking? Because he leaves his vehicle in the driveway, but then takes her car? That's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, it's like he didn't want to mess up his car. I don't know.
What?
And police didn't even have to open the doors when they find her vehicle. they just looked through the windows and they found a mobile crime scene. It was described as a massive amount of human blood and hair smeared across the trunk area of the hatchback.
At this point, I don't even know if it's premeditated. It almost seems like he acted out of anger or delusion or something.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like a mix or something.
Yeah, because, I don't know, he's not doing anything right, put it that way.
Yeah. So once investigators get access to the vehicle, they find the missing link from the crime scene at the house. So in the trunk, surrounded by blood, police recovered 5 spent .45 caliber shell casings and 1 fired .45 caliber bullet. This ballistics evidence perfectly matched the bullet damage and tissue found in the walls of the couple's living room. And not only did this confirm that Karen's car was used to transport their bodies, but it solved the mystery of why there was no shell casings found at the house.
It's like he moved the crime scene from the house to the car.
Yeah. So while the forensics teams were processing the bloody Toyota, investigators were also tracking the victim's financial records. And almost immediately following the couple's disappearance, records show sudden activity on Davido's credit and debit cards. Detectives quickly pulled surveillance camera footage from the local ATMs where the cards were being used. And lo and behold, Timothy Burke is in the camera, shuffling through a wallet, looking like he's searching for his PIN.
No mask or anything? He's just in front of the ATM taking money out.
Just Timothy Burke, yep.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
I don't know. At this point, I can't decide if he's in this crazy mindset or he's losing his mind, whatever, or if he kind of just knows he's caught. Because he's being so reckless, like he doesn't care and I'm going to get caught. But at the same time, is he just completely mad, losing his mind? Because he writes that letter to his daughter, right? Basically saying, I'm sorry for everything. And it almost seemed like he's saying, I'm going to be caught. I'm going to be away for a long time. I don't know. I really don't know.
It's like maybe he wants to be caught. He can go to prison and live there rent-free and...
No landlord.
Landlord.
Kind of have a landlord.
So just days after the couple vanishes, their cards are being used. Investigators, they're looking at the tape and immediately recognize him. November 17th, just 4 days after the initial welfare check at the house, police locate Timothy Burke. And shockingly, he hadn't fled the state. He wasn't on the run. They just found him back at the Stedman Road compound, hanging out.
Back at his house?
Yeah. His rental property.
The one he's renting from Davido.
Yeah, the one he's renting. So how scary would it be that you are in this compound and you're living with Timothy Burke, not knowing what happened, but knowing Davido's missing and Karen's missing? Like, how scary would that be?
Yeah.
This guy is a little unpredictable, like what he could do. And the physical evidence on him and in his living space at the time was absolutely damning. The searches that were done directly linked Burke to the firearms, the ammunition, the financial items belonging to Karen and Davido. So even though law enforcement hadn't actually located the victims' bodies at this point, the evidence was just glaring.
Wait, how did they not locate the bodies? Were the bodies not in the Prius?
Oh, no, they weren't. He just used that vehicle to move the bodies.
Oh, okay.
So Timothy Burke, he was booked into the Thurston County Jail and officially charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of first-degree kidnapping. Even though Timothy Burke was sitting in a jail cell, charged with murder, the community was agonizing over one massive question, and also Ricky's question: where was Karen and Davido? The search went on for nearly 3 weeks, but ultimately in early December of 2023, deputies responded to reports of 2 bodies in a densely wooded area off Stedman Road, which just so happened to be the same road that Burke was living on. The bodies were confirmed as Karen and Davido. The Thurston County coroner later confirmed that investigators suspected several gunshot wounds were present, and they both died from their injuries. The trial got underway in May of 2026, and it became a massive psychological battleground. I think the judge actually said it was 20 days long.
So this is exactly where I thought this was going to go. They have to figure out if he can plead not guilty by reason of insanity.
His defense leaned entirely on pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. They argued that his delusion about his daughter in a body bag caused an amygdala hijacking. Essentially, his brain's higher functions shut down under extreme fear, meaning he snapped and he couldn't tell right from wrong when he pulled the trigger.
Okay, so he didn't deny killing them. He is just saying he had no control.
Yeah, he confessed. He said, I did it.
Okay.
But I just wasn't in the right state of mind. But to argue all of that, he told the state psychologist that during the break-in, he saw Karen with her phone in her hand, and he explicitly admitted that he shot her because he thought that she was calling the police and he didn't want to get in trouble.
Well, that seems weird.
Also, during the trial, the prosecution completely dismantled what the defense argued with a video that Burke recorded himself. This video was recorded at 3:30 a.m. on Sunday, November 12th, about 36 hours after the killings. Burke was actually filming himself at the compound doing his laundry or something in the laundry room, and a female tenant walks in and confronts him for making noise so early. And Burke didn't act panicked or psychotic. He was completely lucid. He argued back, defending himself and stating that his lease doesn't list hours of when he can and can't be doing laundry, which was a very smart move on the prosecution's part.
So basically, this video supported the prosecution's argument because it showed him rationally thinking and defending himself. This isn't someone in a blind psychosis who was delusional or confused.
Yeah, and the physical evidence painted an even colder picture of premeditated execution. At trial, a neighbor testified that at around 8:00 p.m. that Friday night, she heard a very specific cadence of around 3 to 4 gunshots, a pause, and a final shot. She said that they sounded almost like fireworks, and she could even feel the vibration of these gunshots in her chest. But she tried to think nothing of it. She's thinking, oh, they're just fireworks, almost like she was in denial, not wanting to think the worst.
And what's crazy is it seems like that pattern matched the crime scene perfectly.
Yeah, the prosecution laid it out. Burke fired 2 non-lethal shots that dropped Davido to the floor. And seeing Karen with her phone, he fired 2 shots at her, killing her. Then came the pause. Burke walked over to Davido, who was lying helpless on the ground, and fired the final 5th execution shot directly through his head.
Wow.
The jury saw right through the insanity plea. On June 9th, 2026, Timothy Burke was found guilty of 2 counts of premeditated first-degree murder. At his sentencing hearing in early July, the emotional toll this took on the family was devastating. Karen's sister, Pauline Dutton, spoke in court about how Davido was actually trying to help Burke, making it shocking and saddening that Burke felt Davido was a bad person. Karen's eldest son also spoke about how his mom and Davido would never get to hold his son's hand, see his first steps, or read books to him. The judge ultimately sentenced Timothy Burke to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Following the sentencing, Thurston County Sheriff Derek Sanders released a statement extending heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Karen Koep and Davido, hoping the verdict would bring some measure of closure to a community still coping with this tremendous loss. It's really hard to overstate just how much Karen and Davido meant to Thurston County. When you look back at all of those Facebook comments from the sheriff's office post, you don't just see people mourning a chiropractor and a landlord. You see people mourning a woman who nurtured their children and a man who would gladly freeze in the rain just to make sure his tenants had their lights on. They were the kind of people who made their community better just by being in it. And the absolute tragic irony of all of this is that Davido was actually the one trying to help Timothy Burke. He gave him a place to stay on his property, and in exchange, he did work for Davido. But Burke was so lost in his own toxic paranoia that he took away 2 people who were completely dedicated to healing and helping others. And now Burke gets to spend the rest of his life sitting in a concrete box. We hope the swift justice in this case brings some level of peace to Karen and Davido's sons, their family, and the countless patients and friends who love them. Thank you all so much for listening to this week's episode of Crime Salad. If you want to see photos from this case, head on over to our Instagram at Crime Salad Podcast.
And if you want to support the show and get access to ad-free episodes and exclusive bonus content, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/crimesaladpodcast. The link is also in our show notes.
We appreciate you guys so much. Please remember to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us out. And we will see you guys right back here next week for a brand new case. Until then, stay safe out there.